How is the brain involved in tinnitus? Let's review the tinnitus cycle. It is a cycle the brain goes through where tinnitus is first perceived. Then our brains try to figure out what the sound is, so they start to pay attention to it. Because it is an unknown sound, our brains label it as important. After, our bodies respond to this new important sound by increasing our heart rate and sweating. Having our bodies react like this sends us into fear, panic, and anxiety. Because our bodies have such big reactions, our brains are more alert for that sound next time. This causes the cycle to restart. Where does this sound typically come from? It typically comes from damage to the auditory system. When our brain has a lack of auditory input, it makes up sounds to fill in the gaps of what we are missing. Our auditory mechanisms are overcompensating for the lack of input, which causes an overexcitation of neurons, and the tinnitus signal is generated and perceived by us. But why does my tinnitus bother me so much? Well, our autonomic nervous system is activated when we hear significant sounds. At this point, your brain has labeled your tinnitus as important. Our brains label sounds as important or unimportant every day. Imagine sitting in your house and hearing a car go by outside. Typically, that sound is unimportant and your brain would just ignore it. You might not even notice that a car drove by. However, if you were walking across the street and you heard that same sound, you would be more alert and your body would respond appropriately. Right now, your brain has labeled the tinnitus as important, and your body is responding to the perception of that sound. When you perceive tinnitus, your limbic system reacts and your heart rate increases. Your breathing quickens and you start to perspire. Psychologically, it relates to fear, anxiety, hopelessness, and a loss of control. What is the limbic system? It's a variety of structures in your brain that influence your autonomic nervous system, which is an area that controls many different responses. The autonomic nervous system controls your emotions, seizures, memory recall, motivation, learning, and moods. This is where the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism takes place. It directly relates to your heart rate, digestion, sleep, and eating habits. So, what does this have to do with tinnitus and me? Well, these systems are highly activated when tinnitus is bothersome. With high activation of your limbic system and autonomic nervous system, the result is stress, anxiety, and a loss of well being. Positive emotions are suppressed or eliminated, resulting in depression. This is why your brain has labeled the tinnitus as important or harmful or threatening. So let's review your knowledge. Yes or no? Our brain has incorrectly labeled tinnitus as important. Go ahead, take a guess. Yes. Tinnitus is not an important sound, but our brains sure seem to think so. It's alerting our bodies to respond to this important sound, like hearing a baby cry in the middle of the night. How are hearing loss and tinnitus related? A. Hearing loss causes tinnitus. B. Auditory centers have too much input. C. Tinnitus is important, so we can hear it even with hearing loss. Or D. Tinnitus is increased because our auditory centers need more input. I'll give you time to think. If you said D, you are right. Our auditory centers crave more input and stimulation when there is hearing loss. The tinnitus sound is made up to provide our brain with that input. Fill in the blank. The two systems in our brain that are activated when we hear tinnitus and cause our bodies to respond are called what? The two systems are the autonomic nervous system and the limbic system. Great work.